friends, ladies and gentlemen, dear guests, I would like to welcome you today on our discussion on the Civil Association. You probably know it. The topic today will be the Eastern Partnership and its relationship to the European Union. We got two guests today. I will start with my right hand. It's Mr. Duleba. He's the director of the Research Center of the Slovak Foreign Policy Association. You all surely know him. He had been the guest of our discussions before. So I wouldn't tell much about him anymore, but I would like to introduce you to our second guest, who's a foreign guest. His name is Armen Grigoryan. He's from Armenia. He had a lot of experience for more than 14 years as a policy analyst. He will give us a short lecture on his research interest, having been doing researching for the last couple of weeks here in Bratislava. His previous employers are, for example, ALDE Group of the European Parliament. Now he works for Exclusive Analysis Limited in London, and he's a guest researcher at Univerzita in Komenského in Slovakia. I won't take any more time. We will start with a short lecture, and then we will have a couple of comments from Professor Duleba, and then we will open the floor for discussion. It will be maybe moderated from my side, but if you have any questions, feel free to raise your hand. The floor is yours.
Thank you. Thank you for coming. Let me explain why I chose maybe Armenia, Georgia, and Moldova for the study of relations going within this partnership framework. Because these are all relatively small countries, approximately the same size of population. All three don't have significant amounts of raw commodities, especially oil or gas. All three lost most of the industrial capacities after the dissolution of the USSR, and all three have been involved in unsolved conflicts and have been source countries for migration and very dependent on remittances from migrant workers. However, I should mention probably that success or failure of the process preparation for signing association agreements very much depends on Ukraine, because if it falls the other way towards the Russia-led customs union, then there will be more difficult problems for the other countries that are not. So now there are different approaches to the perspective of association agreement. More optimistic ones and not so optimistic ones, I would say. On the optimistic side, there is, for instance, Polish Minister of Foreign Affairs, Sikorski, who 3 weeks ago said that you see this is compared to, for instance, the Union for the Mediterranean, which exists for 3 times longer, but they don't have any such possibility of approaching, and we already can see some results. It was optimistic that Ukraine may sign the agreement and Armenia, Georgia, and Moldova can pre-sign it, so maybe in the next 10-12 months it will be possible for them also to ratify it. In these Eastern Partnership countries, some processes and some internal reforms have been stimulated by the possibility to get more financial and institutional assistance from the EU. In general, the EU's most and more approach seems to work, although there are still many problems concerning the internal political situation. Concerning Armenia, a recent memorandum of the European Commission mentions that the deaths of the demonstrators after the elections in March 2008 have not been properly investigated yet, and there is also demand to adopt the may bring some internal conflict. Civil laws were also very unwelcome in Georgia. Just 2 years ago, the government adopted a law allowing registration of non-traditional, as they say, religious groups not belonging to the Georgian Orthodox Church. Over 60% of the population, according to surveys, were against it, and very recently, in mid-May, there were clashes because a few less than 20 LGBT activists wanted to have a small event on the central square, and some hundreds of people, led by priests by the way, attacked them. Several of them were beaten brutally, and some police constables were also injured. But on the other side, what is important in Georgia's case, they have something that is still unique. They have accomplished something that is still unique for the post-Soviet area, because the opposition could win the election and just be congratulated by the ruling party, and the Central Electoral Committee announced that they won it. So there is significant progress on behalf of political elites, but perhaps less educated and less informed about some people less informed about contemporary developments still need to be better informed on. Perhaps with time they may change their attitudes. In Moldova, there was a very important development last week. Finally, the new coalition government was formed. The previous coalition failed early March, and finally this new coalition was formed by two parties that had the main conflict because of which the previous coalition failed. They also tried to form another coalition in between, but the Constitutional Court overruled some laws that they made, so they again conflicted with each other as a result, and each of them in turns had opportunistic voting together with opposition communists, but finally they got some explanations, very strong one from Commissioner Stefan Sula and from other officials, that this is your chance. Within few days you form a government, or you lose the possibility to sign the association agreement. And Fula was there on 8th and 9th of March. So these conditions set by the EU help to solve some issues, although in Moldova's case, in next year's election, the results of work of this current coalition, because now they have to make this coalition. They realize that according to the surveys, communists have 32.5% and would form a unilateral government in case of an extraordinary election. Another point I want to make on Armenia's example, perhaps, that people are not very well informed about implications of the association agreements. There is an EU information center, and the head of the EU delegation has often meetings with journalists, but both European officials working in Armenia and government officials, they mostly concentrated their recent public announcements on visa facilitation issue. So I think the general public is not very well aware about the association agreement and free trade agreement. And at the beginning there will be large spending required, and fruits will come in the longer term. So this is a point to explain somehow, because on the other side there is very strong campaign against association with the EU in favor of the Russian customs union. And there is, I would say, some pressure on all Eastern Partnership countries. And European experts and also officials say openly, spokeswoman, and more recently Elmar Brok, chairman of the European Parliament Committee on Foreign Affairs, said that it's either, both were in Vienna, and they said it's either association agreement or customs union. But propaganda campaign led from Russia tries to take people astray that you can help both at a time, which is not the case. And some pressure is like recent proposal to increase gas price by 2/3. And this was also mentioned by some experts, Polish Center for Eastern Studies, for instance, that there is another point that is usually not mentioned, that Armenia's government a few weeks ago allowed American companies to look for shale gas. And that provoked some really bad reaction from certain Russian agencies. In Moldova's case, again, gas is one of the leverages. Last year in September, Russian representatives just told Moldovans you should leave the EU third protocol on energy if you want to get cheaper gas. And Moldova pays one of the highest prices for gas now. And also more than $3 billion, almost $3.5 billion Transnistria's debt is also not written off from Moldova. In Georgia, we will see that presidential elections in October, the current parliamentary majority is supposed to have a comfortable majority this time as well, so Prime Minister's favorite candidate will win, and the internal situation is not such as for any opposition party to destabilize. But some actions by Russia, for instance, delimitation of the Russian-made border between Georgia and Abkhazia and South Ossetia, is now one of the hot issues, because after the war 5 years ago there was some demarcation line, and now Russian border troops moved it even forward, and they put full-fledged barbed wire and other systems, like making it a true border, real border kind of, and they also moved it forward even from the previous demarcation line. These are the points, main points, I think, that we could also talk about the European integration index, some points on which areas, which country has progressed more or less, other issues as well. So for the moment,
thank you very much for an initial opening of the whole discussion. It was a very insightful presentation to give us a look at the most recent developments that is going on in the Eastern Partnership in those three countries. Now I will ask Professor Duleba to give his comments on the speech and the whole discussion.
Thank you very much for the floor. It's my pleasure to meet you again. Armen, but from the EU perspective, because the fact is that, okay, the polls are always optimistic. I mean, when it comes to Ukraine, so they expect even more than the Ukraine is ready to deliver. But let me explain what means the Vilnius Summit for the dynamics of the Eastern Partnership. Because it is not a cliche to say that it is a landmark of the Eastern Partnership. For the European Union, it's not only the landmark for the partner countries. I mean, in terms that they were able to cope with the Eastern Partnership agenda, that they are ready and able to implement reforms, etc. But the Vilnius Partnership might mean also the scenario at the end of the Eastern Partnership. So let me just put this this way in order just to provoke your thinking and discussion. 2014, we will have new EU. There will be under the mandate of the Barroso Commission. We will have the elections to the European Parliament, and actually the people who work in the European, especially for the European Commission, who are connected very much with the Eastern Partnerships, over the last couple of years. They do expect that the Vilnius Summit will be a sort of, something they are eager simply to have some tangible results of this policy. And what that means? That means that any of those countries will be ready and able to make a progress in its contractual deal with the European Union, association agreement. This is the key point, which is very important, in terms of the EU will be able to continue to follow this policy. If there will be no progress, with that no country will be able, by the time the Vilnius Summit, simply to agree to go to talks, to sign. Because what we have, the situation is like that Ukraine so far is the only country which can sign an agreement by the time of the Vilnius Summit, because the agreement is agreed in technical terms. The talks that are concluded in October 2011. The agreement was initialed, by February, seems to me, last year, seems to me, and then it might be signed. The other three countries, Armenia, Georgia, and Moldova, by the time of the Vilnius Summit, they can conclude talks, and maybe by the time of the summit, the agreements might be initial. What that means is that the agreement should be translated into all languages of the EU member states, and the text must be verified that they are equal in each language and ready to be, to go to the process of ratification. Because also they should ratify the whole parliaments of the member states and the respective countries. So by the time of the Vilnius Summit, only Ukraine can sign, and the process of ratification of Ukraine accession might start. By the time of the summit, of the Vilnius Summit, Moldova and Georgia, Armenia agreement might be, the initial as the maximum we can expect. And now let me explain why it is so important for the EU to have this outcome, this contractual deal. The association agreement, it is very ambitious offer the EU did to those countries in 2008. If they will sign it, and especially with DCFTA, deep and comprehensive area which is part of the agreement, that mean that they will have to harmonize with 95% of the acquis communautaire, which regulates the functioning of the single market. In other words, the quality and substance of the agreement is equal to the EEA agreements, European Economic Agreements, which the EU concluded with Norway, Iceland, and Liechtenstein. They are part of the market, single market, but they are not political members. Okay, there are some interesting special arrangements because Norwegians, the Iceland government and also the government of Liechtenstein can send experts of their countries to the Council of the European Union because there is more than 30 sectoral forces of the EU and more than 100 150 working groups that produce secondary legislation of the European Union within the Council. If it is approved by the Council, the Commission receives mandate to draft the norm. And then if approved by the Parliament and the Council, then Member States should harmonize and transform them to their national legislation. So they can have observers on the level, the early stage of the formulation of the new acquis, and it goes about 8,000 norms a year. Armen said that the general public in Armenia and the Eastern Partnership is not well informed about the accession agreement, etc. Eastern Partnership is a goal. My impression is that even the governments of those countries are not fully, I would say, informed of the meaning of them, because now it's like 8,000 norms a year that go new norms. During the talks over the agreement, the governments of those countries simply can identify what impact might the existing acquis have on them. They are speaking the new norms. It's like in Slovakia, we tell the would be much more to buy the cat in, but this is the situation, okay? And this is really the decision of those countries that they want to be fully integrated and become a part of the European economic area, or they want to be integrated with customs union of Russia. For the EU, and it was too ambitious, and Sikorsky definitely together they built, so they came up with this initiative to make such ambitious offer for the developing countries. And the situation, it was in 2008, but I think that it was accepted because of the Georgia war, the Russian Georgia, August 2008. Then we had extraordinary summit in September 2008, and the EU, and there was a political mood and willingness of the EU, we have to do something real for those countries in order to integrate them, to help them, etc. If they want to follow our modernization. And this was really excellent, job they did because that they managed this political consensus with the European Union. Let us give them a status close to the law. Because there are association agreements with the southern neighbors, but they do not include this Eastern Partnership. And another definition of the Eastern Partnership, it is about political association, full of question marks. We do not know, and they do not know what to offer to those capital political association. And economic integration, and this is a completely clear, very ambitious. It's like to give them the status of those EU countries. And because of, it took 5 years, more than 5 years for Ukraine to negotiate and to conclude talks on the association agreement, and those countries, it looks like really they are good to complete talks before the summit. In Armenia, the new government did a majority last year, because it was really like the fourth sort of candidate to be successful in concluding talks, but over the last year the government managed really to speed up and work everything. And it is a lot of work. So it's 95% of the European acquis. And in fact it is European economic integration of those countries. And those people who are the European Commission and who are doing with this offer, because the rest of the Eastern Partnership, all those programs, supportive measures, platforms, etc., so these are like tools to assist those countries in the reform if they want to learn our experiences and that's all. But the real business is the agreement. And it's the last call for those to support this sort of offer, which was made in 2008, and within the European Union, because the mood is changing. It's a growing number of countries that are against. Germans completely, when they were very supportive of this initiative, especially starting from their presidency in 2007, and today we do not have Germans on the table of the Friends of the Partnership. It's like friends of Eastern Partnership. Go to the Vilnius, manage something. If you will manage any progress in this contractual rule, let's see, maybe we can sustain the dynamics of this partnership after the Vilnius summit. If not, look, we have the Eurozone crisis, everything we have to reshape internal institutions, and so let us first make the sort of order in our own home, and then let's go with such ambitious offers to our neighbors, etc. So it's really a turning point, the Vilnius summit. And again, Armenia, Georgia, and Moldova, they can conclude talks, they can initial agreements, but they have big problems and they are full of, a number of question marks how they will implement because of the separatist rhetorics. Then it comes to the DCFTA, that means that those governments should control the entire customs territory of their country. They have to ensure inspections from the European Union that they simply, within the agreement, should have the right and access to control the origin of the goods and services. The EU product is not only about the exports from Tiraspol or Transnistria to the EU market, because it's possible to, develop the customs, control, everything. There is some experience in Moldova. Moldova has experience that companies from Tiraspol should register in Chisinau, then they receive certificates to export goods to the EU market, following this existing regime, trade regime between Moldova and the EU. But under the DCFTA, simply Tiraspol should provide the same guarantees and the same business environment for the EU companies and for the EU goods. It cannot become a sort of black hole, for the re-export of Russian, Chinese, etc. goods and services. And that's simply my question to Armen goes, and I'd like to also comment how Armenia will manage this with this border in Nagorno-Karabakh. Because what I know, and maybe I'm misinformed, but actually there is no real border between Armenia and Nagorno-Karabakh. There's a very formal border between, these are two Armenias. Very strange situation, we have two Armenian states, Nagorno-Karabakh and what I know from Armenian colleagues, also Mr. Grigoryan, the same name, but your colleague, he's the leader of one of the... Yes, he said the leader now, the political institution in Nagorno-Karabakh worked better than political institutions in Armenia in terms of the how the Nagorno-Karabakh is ruled, the elections and everything. This is this one, also if you compare Nagorno-Karabakh. So what will be the political price for Yerevan to implement a strict border on Nagorno-Karabakh in order to meet DCFTA provisions and to implement them? This is a question to Armenia, but even, the bigger sort of problem when it comes to Transnistria and Moldova, South Ossetia and Abkhazia and Georgia. So, we have four countries, we have the Eastern Partnership, we have the offer on the table. I'm not going just to assess the performance of the government as the differences. Our institution last year we did research on Ukraine, and the aim of the project was to sort of measure if possible the policy impact of this partnership on Ukraine on three key sectors: trade, energy, and mobility. And so we have quite good record of what Ukraine did within those three areas and what was inspired by the Eastern Partnership. But so this is the starting point. The other scenario will be after the Vilnius. There will be that Ukraine is from Timoshenko. It's a completely politicized issue. It's not about the capacity of Ukraine to deliver in terms of and to implement far the only country that can go in this way with the EU. But there's the problem with Timoshenko and the political situation in Ukraine that we can go to different situation. But so this is the picture we have. And after the Vilnius, if there will be no progress, it might happen the two scenarios. What I think seems to be possible. The first one is the reform of the Eastern Partnership, and simply fact that the partner countries are not ready to absorb offer they receive means for the EU that the EU will have to simply rethink that offer and to think about the different ways how to work with them. If there will be no outcome by the Vilnius summit, simply we will receive a break for 2 years, at least 2 years, not especially pause, something like that. Or the third scenario is that simply we have to resign. That would mean for the EU that actually we cannot influence the development of those countries, and the EU does not have capacities to make them sort of European countries. I don't know what the reasons are, but simply, we are, more than 10 years after the changes in the regimes, and simply you can see in Ukraine, in Moldova, the weaknesses of the political institutions, corruption, so that would mean that the EU should have to apply sort of new real politics scenario, simply to agree with the member states, sort of minimalistic sort of list of interests we have in the region of the world, Israel, but not as a normative interest, actual normative change.
Thank you very much for your comments on the first lecture. There are many points mentioned as the Vilnius summit, and I would just want to start with my questions to Mr. Grigoryan. There are many conditions for EAP partners for the summit. But don't you think they are too political to be really fulfilled? I'm talking more about Ukraine. As Professor Duleba had mentioned, that all those questions, like let's say the Timoshenko case, is very politicized. So is it clearly stated for these countries how to fulfill these conditions, or do you think it is more fuzzy how it is formulated by the European Union, if it is perceived as a clear thing? Then the other thing, it's a very important thing, is DCFTA offer for countries. Isn't this perceived by countries as a sign of the end check to the European Union? Especially, what is the image of the European Union economically in the context of the European crisis? Are these countries still willing to sign up such a check, to adopt so much communitarian if we have these problems in the European Union? And the third thing I would like to ask to Mr. Grigoryan, and what the Professor Duleba already started, are the territorial conflicts in the three countries of your interest, Moldova, Georgia, and Armenia. Each one has a territorial conflict. Is there any solution in sight we can expect? And can we expect signing a free association agreement even though these conflicts are not solved?
With the last question, which is the most difficult issue even. Very difficult for the authorities in Georgia, for instance. They cannot afford to set up customs now on borders with Abkhazia and South Ossetia. That would be de facto recognition. On the other side, they don't control the borders with Russia in that part. So, for Transnistria, in Armenia's case, yes, the control is there is one policeman standing and occasionally checking passports. Usually, if we see some people who look non-Armenian in the car. Or on the way back, they sometimes check cars if they think that someone is bringing too much goods to send to Armenia because it's much cheaper in the car. That's a very occasional thing. And how the government will deal with this, now the OSCE mediators try to organize a new meeting between Armenian and Azerbaijani presidents, but I wouldn't expect very much from that, especially before the coming elections in Azerbaijan in October, which the president will remain for the third term, I'm sure. And currently, partly because of the coming elections, the militaristic rhetoric grows on Azerbaijani side. That usually happens anytime they have elections coming or some problems with large opposition demonstrations. They try to show off somehow and remind that they have the best USD and so on. But I don't expect a new large-scale war, but internally still this border issue for Armenia with Nagorno-Karabakh will remain. There will be no large-scale war, but there will not also be solution nearest future. One thing that may work may be that reciprocal opening of markets. That would be good for Armenian citizens because now there are so-called oligarchs, these politically related businessmen, they have monopolies in many spheres. If the internal market is open for European goods, that would also be quite a big thing. But as conflict resolution is concerned, it's difficult to stand. The issue of seeing as a blank check. In Georgia's case, I would not say this is the issue because the previous government and the current one and over 70% of the population are in favor, and political elite is more or less adequately informed. They realize also the border issue. In Armenia's case, there is some problem that some people in the government are interested in getting more credits or more assistance, and some people are very corrupt. It's not this is not something new. So, but for the president and some others, the topic may mean not just blank check, but an opportunity to have some maneuver, not just to yield to Russia's demands. There are some demands, and even such, there is such, I forgot to mention previously, an absurdist argument that the Europeans will require you to give more space to the homosexuals and even allow them to marry, and Russia will never ask for such things, so Russia is better for you. In Moldova's case, it's also, I don't think it's a blank check situation. They just realize that they can forget about getting to the EU and just also will have to yield to Russia if they lose this coalition now. And they are also under pressure. And just a few days ago, one known Moldovan expert mentioned that just very recently 40 NGOs have been registered advocating for the customs union with Russia. So they have to get money from somewhere to print leaflets for it. So there is some dirty money, or perhaps some semi-shadow money coming from somewhere. The other question?
It was about the Vilnius summit, about the political conditions for the
unless there is suspicion that they start to apply selective justice, because after the October elections, two former ministers were arrested and Catherine Ashton during a visit to Tbilisi warned against selective justice, but a few days ago, former Prime Minister has also been arrested. Although, as the security doctrine and the commitment to continue with European integration is concerned, both fractions, the current government and the previous one, which is country's opposition, vote almost unanimously. In Armenia, it depends again mainly on the president's will to adopt the laws that he has 60% majority. There are some nationalist groups that would make a big noise about the issue with Karabakh if there is some customs set up. The next few months will be very critical. There is also some understanding that this opportunity with this partnership is the last one, like now or never.
How is this perceived in Ukraine, these political conditions, the selective justice issue? Is it clearly about the Timoshenko case, or is it more about the state of judiciary?
It is both, but it was politicized by the case of Timoshenko. By the way, Bratislava quite important sort of place in this all this discussion with Timoshenko, by the way, and the possible signs of depoliticization of this case because of the summit of the presidents next week here. If you remember, actually, so let me just explain it. I think it's also important for you to know that you will have a very important event. Because of, I mean, in terms of the relationship between President Yanukovych and the leaders of the EU member states, because Ukraine was supposed to organize the summit last year in Yalta. Remember, it was a fiasco, and newly inaugurated German President Gau simply one of the first issues he raised in office. German president was Timoshenko case and relations with Ukraine. And this was also the change of the German approach in this issue, because if you follow Merkel's sort of politics over the last couple of years, I think there is one interesting, it's my observation and wrong, but there's some issues, several issues, that are not so important for her, to push forward with the German politics. And she responded, and if there is a majority of Germans who are, who have an impression that something is black or white, she resigns to fight this, to change the understanding. And the case of Timoshenko is one of them. Nuclear energy is another point. Then I should add that if there is 80% of Germans who think nuclear energy is bad, okay, fine. So before the elections in Germany, because they will have elections this year in September, I think that there is and this was very important for why and how the Timoshenko case was politicized in the discourse of the respect between the EU and Ukraine. And out of Gau's initiative, most of presidents invited, and actually there is an annual regular summit of President of Central countries. There are 80 countries involved. Originally it was pentagonal, hexagonal, and then then it evolved into Central European Initiative. And actually, Ukraine, and there's a rotating sort of presidency, and it was like time of Ukraine to organize the summit last year, but it was a fiasco because of Lukashenko and because of Germany. And German president recently inaugurated and simply politicized the issue. And now we have it in Bratislava. It was not the time of Slovakia to host the summit. But this was agreement between, because not the only Polish president, Komorowski, our president, Kashmarovich, President Lithuania, were ready to go to participate in the summit last year. And, since from May last year until present, there are informal talks between the presidents, and especially with the Polish and Slovak president, and Yanukovych, who actually won in Slovakia, trying to keep Ukraine on track. And Yanukovych will receive exceptional, I would say, the chance to speak to the leaders because he is invited to participate, and also the leaders who simply refuse to accept his invitation. Here in Bratislava next week, he will have a big chance simply to speak, directly to them and explaining why, what to do with this case of Tymoshenko, etc., sort of justice. And this is, I think, from this point, the summit, which will take place in the next 1 week, is a unique. So it was also politicized, and whenever you speak to Ukrainians, those who understand what Tymoshenko did in January 2009, when she signed, not she, but she simply pressed the chief of Naftogaz of Ukraine to sign the gas agreement with Russia. And if you understand that because of this agreement, Ukraine will overpay more than $7 billion gas within the 10 years, how you will respond? Now, when the Prime Minister of Slovakia managed to sign the agreement, which would mean for taxpayers in Slovakia to pay for nothing, $17 billion. So how you would, I understand that maybe, so there are also arguments in Ukraine, those who really think that the Tymoshenko and what she did, especially after this agreement, she violated, the existing rules, because the agreements like this should have, there should be a mandate given by the government. And if you read and speak Ukrainian, you can check the website of the Parliament of Ukraine, and you can download free the report of the committee, parliamentary committee who investigated the process of this agreement, and including the full description of the terms of the government that she from Moscow asked for the mandate. The majority of the members of the government voted against the mandate. Nevertheless, she pressed the chief of the Naftogaz to sign the agreement, and Ukrainians will be overpaid for nothing, $17 billion. So this was the case. Those in Ukraine understood who was Tymoshenko, very nice lady, but actually, she was and she still is one of the Ukrainian oligarchs. And all businesses she did, and started some of them simply were businesses roofed by the government. I'm not going to explain the story of Tymoshenko, but actually all her businesses, starting from the first cooperative, Gorbachev during the perestroika, they simply allowed this sort of collective businesses. Because of her father-in-law was the member of the regional party committee of the Dnipropetrovsk region, and he was controlling he was responsible for cultural affairs in the Dnipropetrovsk region. He managed that the company established by Tymoshenko and his son simply received a monopoly position in all cinemas in Dnipropetrovsk region, which is larger and bigger than Slovakia. Simply, all cinemas had only chance now to receive the films, etc., from disco. The same was Petrol, Lazarenko, then was some gas, etc. So this is one part of the story of Tymoshenko. And even if she violated the rules, okay, politically in the EU there's a perception that the judiciary was misused, and simply it's not typical in our regimes that the political opponents, okay, we have two different perceptions, but this is very important to understand because this is the case, the key case that should be resolved if we want to have some progress at the time of the Univerzita. There was the EU-Ukraine summit in February this year, and the conclusions was that Ukraine decided by President Yanukovych that Ukraine will accept decision by the court of Strasbourg. We actually now the heart of the decision, and the first decision of this court of Strasbourg was that simply she was detained, not aligned with the Ukrainian legislation. So there was a violation of Ukrainian legislation that she was kept and sent to prison before the legal process started. But still, this court should decide whether the merits of the case, whether she was, whether the decision of the Ukrainian court was, done, following the existing valid Ukrainian legislation. So we are still waiting. The deadline for Ukrainian authorities following this conclusion of the summit was the May of this year. You know that in May, Yanukovych released former Minister of Interior Lutsenko. So there was like a gesture that, okay, we are doing well, and now we don't accept this condition. And but not because of the legal proceeding which is still going on in Strasbourg, we are still waiting. Okay. Recently, the ambassador of the European Union, Mr. Komenského, a week ago, in one portal interview, said, okay, the deadline is the time of the Univerzita. So it's November. Okay, and we will see whether this court of Strasbourg, whether the summit will manage to finalize the procedure and whether we will have some decision. So this is very important. But this is for Germany, for some key leaders of the key EU member states who will come next week to Bratislava to speak to Yanukovych, and vice versa, he will receive the chance to speak to them, is the key issue Tymoshenko. Even if there is a violation, simply the Tymoshenko should be released from the jail. So it's also my question to you, whether you think it's also, sort of corresponding to our, whether politicians should intervene into, the court legal procedures. Because actually we expect Yanukovych should intervene into the legal procedures. And vice versa, our leaders indicated in the European there's a legal framework. I expect that she should be released anyway. Okay, this is a political condition. I mean, the law which regulates the judicial system in Univerzita. So there's another case, and actually they are doing some reforms, but still, it's not so important whether they will have the law fully corresponding to the EU sort of parts, or Tymoshenko should be released. That's the condition.
I will have a very short follow-up question, and then we'll have the question from the audience. Do you think that President Yanukovych still has some credibility in the EU leaders when he's talking to them? Because you have mentioned the February summit 25th, EU-Ukraine, but on 4th of March he was in Russia having a meeting with President Putin, saying that he's still thinking about cooperation with Russia in the customs union. He was commenting on the decrease of the economic these three countries, didn't he lose some of his credibility by such steps?
No, actually, Ukraine signed with Russia an agreement which gives Ukraine the status of observer to the customs union. Okay? So Ukrainians will be a part of the procedures and the regulation constituting the customs union, but not a member of the customs union. So there's nothing that might prevent Ukraine to sign a such agreement on this issue. Yes, Russians, so they are well, and Armen already was describing how they perform NGOs advocating the customs union, etc. But also I know one slogan from Ukraine, so actually Russian propaganda tells the Ukrainians, okay, if you will sign association with the European Union, it's for you like to buy a ticket on Titanic. Please go to look at the EU is in crisis, everything else, so collapse. Okay, so this is really, they work well in this. In Ukraine, because of this also, I mean, it is oligarchy system, with very strong oligarchy groups. If you follow the sectors of Ukrainian economy, you can see that three key sectors: metallurgy, chemical industry, and agriculture. Only metallurgy and chemical industry produce almost 70% of the Ukrainian GDP, 70. And they are concentrated within the 6 eastern Ukrainian regions. So my thesis is that Ukraine cannot have a stable government ruling against the 70% of GDP, which is controlled by several very important. And yes, there are some, it's not easy the populations. I mean, it's not like a uniform political party, but really it consists of several sort of groups, etc. But when it comes to metallurgy and chemical industry of Ukraine, the main competitors of them on the global markets are Russian and Chinese companies in the given sectors. So for them to achieve access to the EU market would be like to at least bring several steps now to receive the better positions against Russian and Chinese competitors. So they are really ready and they want, I mean, there is a political support for the association. Agriculture is a growing sector. It's a new one because after the Chernobyl, there was a disaster, not speaking of the economic conditions, technologies, etc. But last year, agriculture, I mean, the share of agriculture in the national budget of Ukraine was almost 20%, like 70 or something like that. This is it's a so dynamic growth of this because of the Ukraine is something very exceptional, starting from 6-5% in a few years ago, now it's almost 70%, almost 20% of the share of the GDP. So these three sectors, I mean, are in favor of the signing of the accession with the European Union, but at the same time, of course, the agency have been preserving their markets, especially agriculture sector, I mean the markets in Kazakhstan, Russia, Belarus, and so on. So I would say that economic interest in there, even at the level of the sort of this oligarchic elite in Ukraine, but still there are some reservations when it comes to the political struggle within Ukraine, who is Poroshenko, who is Yanukovych, their personal stories, animosities and everything. And I mean, it's like in Ukraine, we have this two sort of group of factors and actors. There's a growing interest in favor of signing agreement with the EU and the domestic sort of marasmus, I would say, and animosities with the political leaders to prevent them simply by Yanukovych to make this, Thank you.
Yeah, so my question was about the role of Russia in all this situation. We have already discussed this a little bit, that Russia is supporting the NGOs to increase the general public opinion towards Russia. But I would like to ask, what is the official offer from Russia to those countries? Because I think those countries are now standing between the EU and maybe Russia, or this is how I see it. And I would say that this difficult trade agreement is more than the custom union with Russia. So why do they choose, or do they, maybe they don't choose the Russian direction, but I think they try to choose this. And the related question is whether are there other motivations like some hard powers, for example, if we can see those countries, Georgia and Armenia, as really independent, or are they under the impact of or under the influence of the Russia's power, maybe the army which is still in Moldova, for example, and so all this, that what are the motivations for those countries, and what are the tools of Russia maybe to change the opinion in those countries?
I would say we might start with
Well, influence is very large in Armenia, I would say. First of all, the largest Russian military base abroad now, and they now increase their presence with new surface missiles and anti-aircraft missiles deployed. They say because of possible growing destabilization in the Middle East because of Syria, maybe American or Israeli strike on Iran, but they have also very strong political support in Armenia. Some parts openly support Russian position. In Georgia, there is no such party, and there is influence to some extent. In Armenia's case, more or less optimistic point is that we have no joint border with Russia, because otherwise even the current level of independence would not be sustained. And the worst case scenario is an outbreak of war with Azerbaijan again, and within a few days Russia may deploy so-called peacekeepers and close the issue in that case. But as I said before, I don't expect a full-scale war. And in Moldova, yes, in Transnistria, there are some Russian troops, and recently there were disputes with Ukraine. I think was not allowing Russian planes to move some equipment into Transnistria. And there are talks between Moscow, Kishinev, and Tiraspol. Another influence by Russia is, in Georgia's case, Russian passports are distributed to inhabitants of separatist territories. In Transnistria, it's probably not like 100%, because there is another point problematic between EU and Moldova, that visa liberalization cannot be completed, also because Transnistria has unclear status. Its inhabitants would also get the possibility to travel, or they would not. So, there are different leverages of Russian influence, and even some trade wars, but that they don't say they just make a trade war with someone. They just say your production is not complying with our sanitary standards. So in different times it was Latvian canned fish, and Ukrainian and Belarusian dairy, and Moldovan wine, and Georgian wine, and mineral water. At some point, Polish pork. So it's also one of the leverages.
And the guts is the key leverage they have. I think the Ukrainian case is very illustrative one. Because actually, Ukraine, because of this Timoshenko's contract in January 2009, actually Ukrainians pay more than $500 US dollars for 1,000 cubic meters of gas. We pay more than 330 what we Slovaks pay, so the border, all Slovak-Ukrainian border. So you can see that it's almost like 60% of price of the Ukrainians pay, and they paid 6,009. It's the highest price for Russian diaspora. So how you can explain it in economic trade market terms? It's impossible to explain it. It's a political price. And it took many times when Yanukovych was in Moscow speaking to Putin, Azarov, and Boyko, let's so it's like we are brothers. So let's be good. But you can see that you should resign. And part of the condition was you should stop your effort to sign the accession agreement. So it's completely political. And it's the most influential leverage, I would say, because actually it really has very negative impacts on the economy and also on businesses. They would be happy to pay less, and they're saying, okay, join us with the customs union, we will simply decrease and lower the prices, and you will be happy, and that's it. Okay, so this is the leverage. As they offer, as Armen told them, actually they offer that they will increase double, triple the price if you go to it.
But now some people say, okay, let's join customs union, and they will give us price cut.
Yes, it's like domestic Russian prices. Actually, it was 60, 70 US dollars per 1,000. It's not more than 500 pesos. But nevertheless, Ukrainians managed to live with this, even the businesses, even if it has some. Even I think it's also good. I would say it's also positive aspect of this, because actually those businesses should work with even having such expensive inputs into the metallurgy and chemical industry still should be competitive on the new markets and on the global markets, because actually they're not still on the new markets with their metallurgical and chemical. They are not actually the tariffs and the main partners for them. They are actors on the global markets, not so much on the EU. And they would benefit from the association with this year, definitely. So, and then cultural heritage, political heritage. Armen already said that they would not request to adopt some laws, anti-discrimination law and so on. So it's not the customs union about this. The accession agreement is about the sectoral reforms. It consists of 31 sectoral chapters, and Slovakia was acceding to the European Union. We had 32. It's completely, the accession agreement, which is open within the Eastern Partnership, is identical, to the accession agreements. And actually, and plus is DCFTA. And actually, those countries should harmonize with all the EU legislation, but it's the sectoral agreement is not it's okay if agreement is signed to the contractual deal. They could simply to use it to press for the reforms in those countries. But this CFTA is a business, real business. But it's really understood as a complex agreement that those countries, the European countries, and really a part of the European project. And then we can discuss new institutional arrangements for them, following the Norwegian model, that they can have status of observers in the working groups. Maybe like there is an EU EFTA Council which can veto EU legislation. Norway, Iceland, Liechtenstein can veto EU legislation. balance this council, but it never happened. They never increased its flight. I think we will not maybe Ukraine as well. Right. But I think it's not the question of the will of this political association or institutional association of these countries. They will not balance. But if they will be incorporated, this is the start of the process.
There is a gas pipeline from Iran to Armenia, but Russians several years ago forced Armenian government to sell it to them, so it's not operational. And before that, it had been planned to make a normal pipeline at 1400 millimeters, but they again forced the Armenian government to make it 700, so it could not be used for transit. But just a few days ago, I was reminded by a Turkish professor that in certain cases, Azerbaijan also used this gas price to loan Turkey when Turkey appeared to be willing to normalize relations with Armenia. Then again, there was a very big increase of gas price. Could be one of the reasons why Turkish government backed that idea.
Is there any other questions?
One comment, if I may. My name is Jan Cingel. I'm from the Slovak Atlantic Commission. Recently I ran into projects in Georgia, so I know the region quite well. I have some personal ties with Armenia as well, so I know what Armen is talking about. And also the Nagorno-Karabakh. I was in Nagorno-Karabakh and they checked me at the borders quite well, so I don't look Armenian probably. So Armenian or my Armenian was too poor. But about the question which you posed, moderator, about the expectations on the part of those countries which are aspiring to become the CFTA members, especially Georgia. I have some experience in Georgia. It is really like buying a cat in a sack, as Professor Duleba said. Many people, regular people don't even know what the CFTA means in Georgia, for sure. The elites have some blurry idea, but their vision is to counterbalance the markets which they lost in 2008 in Russia. So they hope for getting markets which they lost before they were exporting agricultural products, wine, mineral waters to Russia. They hope to counterbalance this export to European Union. That was during the Saakashvili's regime. Current government, they try to kind of mend the relations with Russia. They managed to have some agreements already. Mineral water can be already sold to Russia. There are some discussions about the wine. So that's on the Georgian part. It might be kind of counterbalancing the loss of Russian market. So they would like to join the CFTA as soon as possible. In order to get better results. On the other hand, they don't, or they underestimate maybe the impacts of the application of these results. A couple of months ago, there was a slight increase in prices of meat in Georgia because of new phytosanitary regulations which were introduced because of the DCFTA. And the general public was very surprised why there is an increase of prices of meat. And the government explained it because of Brussels. And then they could see a slight drop in the support for the accession to the CFTA. So those are connected. So to say, causes, as you may say. Maybe just one comment about the unique parliamentary elections in Georgia. That is true. That it was quite a unique change of the regime through the ballots in Southern Caucasus, quite unusual. But there are some voices which say that Saakashvili was counting that the current government would split right after the elections because the coalition was built by so many different parties, so diverse agendas, from xenophobes and nationalists through liberals, pro-European and pro-NATO parties, that they might disappear over time, which might happen, but we'll see. The only thing which is holding together the politician is Ivanishvili, who is the Prime Minister of Georgia, billionaire, whose personal wealth is higher than the whole GDP of Georgia. There was some kind of survey that he would be able to run the whole Georgia for 3 years from his own pocket, which he maybe is doing actually. So that's it.
Thank you for your comment. We'd like to comment. Thank you. So anyway, very interesting issue was raised up. There are two scenarios. We might join DCFTA or the Customs Union. What might we expect when this happens? Let's say European Union by the DCFTA offers to Ukraine a huge market, great standards and everything, so it opens up to a third country. However, on the other hand, as we mentioned, Ukraine is still dependent on energy from Russia or coming from the Customs Union. So if it joined the DCFTA, it would raise a barrier between Ukraine and Russia. On the other hand, if it joined the Customs Union, it will again pose problem for Ukraine to export to the European Union. As we know, Ukraine joined not long ago the WTO and have negotiated some rates, customs tariffs and so on. And if it joined the Customs Union, it will have to renegotiate it, and there is a possibility that all the partners will ask for taking back those trades or some reimbursement for the change. So what do you think? What are the scenarios of, let's say, Ukraine?
I do understood that the EU might initiate talks with the Customs Union to find some solution. Of course, Russia would accept that this under question. I mean to agree on some important sectorial sectors, commodities, maybe services, so that would make it easy for those countries simply now to. That will be, I think, it would be good, because sooner or later they will start with Russia to work on the sort of one customs union, one European market. I think it's not that but still, there's a Belarus and Kazakhstan also. It's not that bad, is it? Kazakhstan, Belarus is not that. Otherwise, I mean, the EU simply cannot sign to manage the liberalization of the trade regime with the non-parliamentary member states. And this is the problem. But the talks might start. But we will see, so this is a scenario. For Ukrainians, I mean, there are more pluses on the side of the association of DCFTA with the European Union. Actually, the National Center for Strategic Studies and the President of Ukraine, they did a sort of model study, and they, on impact on the economy, I do not have it with me, so that I was not taking it, sorry, but actually the model for the impacts of the economy in Ukraine, they had three scenarios: like soft integration with the Customs Union, hard integration with the Customs Union, and the signing of the DCFTA, because it's only one scenario, you cannot have soft or hard. DCFTA, the European Union, is just on the one. And actually the outcome of this analysis was in favor of the DCFTA with the European Union. In terms of exports, imports, trade, etc. So it's like, I mean, there is in Ukraine, but because of the political concerns, I think that if Ukrainians want to sign DCFTA, they should manage it this year. If they will not manage to sign this agreement this year, then they will not manage to sign it in the coming years. And there are open questions: how new Commission, how new European Parliament, there will be presidential elections in 2015, and how one will be ready to be serious about the talks and so on. So if they will not manage the deal this year, they will not manage it in the coming, I would say, couple of years. So, and having no prospect within a couple of years to sign the DCFTA, I think that Russia will receive more leverage and simply, I mean, the game will be open, and I will exclude that it might finish by the customs. They will join the customs union. So we have a very tricky situation, because the Vilnius summit is the landing, it's not a cliche. So there's only scenario going to maintain that existing offers still on the table is Eastern Partnership, because other countries, they can conclude all, they can have nice agreement, but they will have problems to implement it, even if it is ratified. Especially DCFTA, which is core of the core of the Eastern Partnership. Only in Ukraine you can see that we have leverages the EU to simply achieve something what we want to achieve, make them European countries and part of the European Union. And this is the stake this year. And Ukrainians, it's very important how to manage because they can only. And I think also completely with Armen, and he said in his presentation that Ukraine is a big country. If they will not manage to sign an agreement, then association with other countries will prospect to very, very good to manage. And for the whole partnership, this will be the end of this mine. Maybe now the diplomats don't like it. Like today, I mentioned Ambassador Visegrad said, you'll see. But it might be the end of this partnership. It might be the success. It might get the second wind with the partnership as a policy, or it might be.
So it seems that the European Union has adopted all or nothing.
And this is the whole Ukraine. It's really the decision of Ukrainian authorities to make the conditions and to sign it. Or and then now other countries will be able to sign. We will have a very nice deal with applauding if there will be Armenian, Georgia, Moldova, maybe an initial by the time of the summit. But everyone will see that that's the end. It's not the start. That's the end. We will be applauding good and nice agreements.
When you start, it's the policy. For Armenia, for Moldova, it's either end of aspirations or a new beginning. It's not the end of the process, but beginning of a new process or end of everything.
With new rules and new goals. Not that the agreement as it is called.
The way to go.
Are there any other questions or comments from the audience? Then I will just probably wrap the whole discussion up with a little pessimistic outlook for the future. Or we will see in November. We can be really watching closely the case of Yulia Tymoshenko if she will be released according to the predictions of Professor Duleba, because it seems that a lot of the development will be built on the case of Yulia Tymoshenko. Thank you all for coming. I hope to see you again on our events. You can find us on the internet.